I'm sorry, but I have to depart from the theme a little bit. You know, I sometimes feel like, you know, you can do something like antithetical to the theme, you know, like when we had the poverty night, I wrote about rich people, you know. So rather than do something, you know, melancholy and sad, I'll do something uplifting, we'll see. I found this little plaque, you know, and it has these little, I don't know what you call these. Cherish each new day, mend a quarrel, search out a friend, dismiss suspicion and replace it with trust, write a love letter, share some treasure, give a soft answer, encourage youth, manifest loyalty in word or deed. And you know, I saw this and I thought, well, you know, I could see that there could be like, this could be like the outline of a story. And it goes on, and I couldn't fit it all into one story, so I had to kind of trim it a little bit. But I'll go to the last part of it. It says, take pleasure in the beauty and wonder of the earth. Speak your love. Speak it again. Speak it still again. Speak it still once again. So with that in mind, I'm going to read us a real uplifting story here. Hope you enjoy it. You can tell me if you don't. It's called, like the beginning of this, Cherish Each New Day. Anybody want to look at this? All right. Cherish each new day. Rick was so tired his eyes burned and his head ached as he groped to shut off the alarm clock. He missed and knocked the clock off onto the floor, and still it beeped, an incessant beep, like a backup alarm on a piece of heavy equipment at a construction site. Beep, 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 beep. By the time he finally managed to shut it off, he had practically worked himself into a sweat. He was groggy and his head swam. He had a hangover, his second ever. Normally, Rick Berman didn't drink. He had tried beer, but he didn't like it. And once at college, some friends had tricked him into eating Jello shots until he'd gotten sick. They all laughed at him. It was a miserable experience, and he swore, never again. Refraining from alcohol was an easy promise to keep because Rick was a bit of a nerd. He was tall, and he kept his dark brown hair in an old-fashioned business cut that was a little too short on the sides. He wore glasses with black plastic frames that made him look like a raccoon. He was awkward, both socially and athletically, and managed to make it through both high school and college without a single date. But he was a nice fellow, affable and warm-hearted, quick to smile. Consequently, though he was often the brunt of the joke for his nerd-like appearance, he always had a few close friends who appreciated him for his kindness, warmth, and decency. When Rick wasn't around in the break room at the office or at happy hour after work, when less sensitive sorts were making fun of Rick, his friends would laugh along with them until one of the ladies present would rise to his defense and say, "Oh, come on, don't be so mean. Rick is such a nice guy." Whereupon everyone would cluck and shake their heads and someone inevitably would say, "Poor Rick." One of his most stalwart defenders was a pert blonde named Leanne, who until recently had worked in the secretarial pool. Unfortunately, she'd been implicated in the theft of some office supplies and was offered a chance to resign, which she did. When she left, she took Rick's heart with her. She was the first girl he'd ever dated and the first girl he'd ever kissed. He was hopelessly in love with her. In fact, he was so in love with her that he was willing to forget how many dates she had broken. He preferred to think about the dates she had actually kept, 3 of them, over a course of 3 months, with a goodnight kiss at the end of each one that set poor Rick's heart to pounding. The thrill of her kisses made it almost worth the $100 loan she touched him for on that last day. That was weeks ago, and she'd broken every date he called her for since then. He was beginning to think she was avoiding him, which vexed him greatly because he really wanted to believe the best about her. He wanted to believe all those wonderful things she had told him, that he was sweet, that he was special, that he was the kind of guy she could just be herself with. when she snuggled up to him in the movie theater, when she held his hand, when she rested her head on his shoulder, he felt exalted. And all those phone calls and text messages that she excused herself to take really were annoyances to her. Yes, he wanted to believe that. They were intrusions from a jealous ex-boyfriend, from people she owed money to, from needy family members, brothers, sisters, a drunken dad, all vestiges of a troubled past she was trying desperately to shake so she could somehow carve out a little time to be alone with him. Ah, poor Rick. You're so patient with me, she once told him. I can't believe you put up with me. But what else could he do? He was smitten. Indeed, he was so deeply in love, and he wanted so much to believe Leanne that he was eager to clutch at any straw. So he did. The hope he latched onto came in the form of a package he had received in the mail yesterday. It was from the astrologer, Eugenia Jones. A few weeks earlier, he had signed up online for a free reading and was promised a gift in the mail. This was it. A small amulet on a chain, along with a handwritten letter from Eugenia. It said, "Dear Rick, I have examined the information you sent me, and I have consulted the stars and guiding spirits on your behalf. I can see that you have a need for people to like and admire you, and yet you tend to be critical of yourself. You should take heart, my dear friend, and trust that others can see the goodness within you. You have considerable capacity that you have not turned to your advantage. You may have doubts right now as to whether you have made the right decision about some important things in your life. Perhaps you have found it unwise to reveal too much of yourself to others. Maybe you think some of your aspirations are unrealistic. I understand exactly how you feel, and I want you to know that, strange as it may seem, the stars are aligned in your favor. Please accept the amulet I have sent you. It contains chips of genuine lapis lazuli, a stone with very positive vibrations. Wear it for luck and proceed with confidence. Rick, I invite you to visit my website for your daily forecast. I offer it to you at no cost. Blessings upon you, Eugenia." So he logged on, he followed the prompts to establish his account, and then clicked on the personalized forecast, compliments of Eugenia. It said, "Cherish each new day." Write a love letter. Search out a friend. Dismiss suspicion and replace it with trust. Share some treasure. Manifest loyalty in word or deed. Be bold. Take a chance. Appreciate. Be kind. Be gentle. Be willing to laugh at yourself. Speak your love. Speak it again. Speak it again. Speak it still, once again. He thought for a while. Maybe, he thought, maybe I should take a chance and follow this advice. It was 5 o'clock Saturday evening, and he'd been anticipating yet another lonely Saturday night. Leanne had backed out of a dinner date, saying that her brother was in town and staying at her apartment. For the next few days, until he was gone, maybe it really wasn't a good time, she had told him. Rick hit the print button for a hard copy of Eugenia's forecast, took it from the printer, and read it again. Cherish each new day. Write a love letter. Search out a friend. Dismiss suspicion and replace it with trust. Share some treasure. Manifest loyalty in word and deed. Yes, he thought, it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I'm going to cherish this day, starting now. He picked up a pen and a pad and sat down to write. After several drafts, he had something he felt was suitable for Leanne. Dear Leanne, as I awake each morning, I find that all I can think of is you. I'm so sad for all the things that happened at the office, how you were falsely accused of stealing. That has robbed you of your job, and it has robbed me of my greatest pleasure, which was to see you at work every day. I'm sorry if I sounded impatient the other day about repaying the loan. I understand you are unemployed, and so it's really hard for you right now. I want you to know that I'm not the least bit worried about the money. In fact, you don't even have to repay it. Consider it a gift, freely given. And I have more money if you need it. Because the fact is, Leanne, I will always be your friend. You brighten my life. You're the sweetest girl I've ever known. I love you, Leanne. always will. Your friend, Rick. He folded the letter. If this gets too long, I can stop.
What happens?
He folded the letter and put it into his shirt pocket. Then he checked his wallet. It was well stocked with a wad of bills he had picked up from the bank in anticipation of his date with Leanne. Well, plans change, he said to himself. Share some treasure. Yeah, here we go. First, he went to a local emporium where he could buy a card, a box of chocolates, and a half dozen roses for Leanne. He signed the card and sealed it with his love letter inside. Then he was off to Leanne's apartment. He intended only to drop the card and flowers off outside her door because he didn't expect her to be home. On the phone, while canceling their date, she had told him she and her brother would likely be out visiting all of his old friends. So he was surprised then to hear music and laughter through her door when he arrived. It was quite a party going on. They didn't even seem to hear the doorbell, so he knocked loudly. Finally, the music stopped. Leanne opened the door just a crack and peered out. Leanne? Rick asked. She opened the door, stepped out into the hall, and looked at him, wide-eyed. Rick, you're not supposed to be here. You know I have company, right? But, Leanne, you're not supposed to be here either. You said you'd be out, so I was just going to drop these. He held out his gifts, flowers in one hand, candy box and card in the other. Leanne looked at them, perplexed. It's okay, I want you to have them, please. Timidly, she accepted the gifts. Then she gave him a peck on the cheek and thanked him. I'd invite you in, Rick, but this really isn't a good time. On any other day, Rick would have simply accepted the rejection quietly and gone home. But today was different. He reached up and touched the amulet under his shirt, and he remembered the advice he had received from Eugenia. Be bold. Take a chance. Well, couldn't I at least meet your brother? Of course you can meet him, Rick. Just give me a minute, okay? I need to straighten up a bit. No, you don't need to straighten up anything on my account, Rick said. But Leanne ignored him. She slipped back into the apartment, closing the door behind her. As Rick waited, he could hear voices through the door. They were faint, as if whispering. He couldn't make out what was being said. Then he heard some laughter and a feminine voice, Leanne perhaps, saying, Come on, you guys, I'm serious. Then more indecipherable babble, some more laughter, the clinking of some glass, and finally, Leanne opened the door. Come on in, Rick. Here, this is my brother, Charlie. Rick found himself shaking hands with Charlie, a burly man in his 30s who reeked of beer and aftershave. He looked like a bouncer and smiled like a politician. His eyes were glassy, and his speech was a bit slurred. So you're, Dick, huh? Rick corrected. Yes, Rick, Leanne said. She placed her hand on Charlie's shoulder, leaned close and spoke slowly, emphasizing certain words. You know, Charlie, my boyfriend from work, the one I told you so much about. Oh yeah, Rick, Charlie said, repeating Leanne's words. Your boyfriend from work. Well, Rick, I guess you know most of these folks here then. Rick looked around the room and realized that, indeed, everyone there except Charlie was someone he recognized from the office. Sitting on the couch was Daisy, the receptionist, with Gordon from sales beside her. Then there was Susie, standing with a drink in hand next to Bill from accounting. Get it, Bill from accounting? And then Ellie. As soon as Rick met eyes with her, she approached, flashed a smile, and said, Hi, Rick, before putting her arm around Charlie's waist and leaning against him. Charlie put his arm around Susie and gave her a long, impassioned kiss. The two of them seemed suddenly oblivious to the presence of anyone else in the room. They've become such good friends, Leanne said with a smile. And Rick, you know Mark, of course. She nodded toward Mark, who stood by himself, drink in hand, poker-faced. Mark, come and say hello to Rick now, Leanne said. Mark approached and offered his hand, then said, Well, Rick, how about a drink? We've got some beer and we've got some vodka. No, Rick doesn't drink alcohol, Leanne interjected. Oh, a teetotaler, Mark said, with a slight sneer. He turned and headed toward the couch where Daisy and Gordon sat. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'd like something to drink, Rick said. He surprised even himself with the statement. Mark's tone made him realize he was being snubbed. Yesterday he might have accepted that, but today he was determined to be the new Rick, willing to be bold, willing to take a chance. Leanne was clearly impressed, or surprised. Well, what would you like, Rick? I don't know. I don't really like beer. Suddenly it seemed the room was abuzz with everyone trying to help Rick determine the beverage of his choice. People smiled and offered him glasses with liquids of various colors. Here, try this. What do you think of this one, Rick? No, here's what you ought to have. Nah, that's a lady's drink, Rick. Here, have some of this. It'll put hair on your chest. Actually, Rick didn't like any of it. Not having acquired a taste for liquor, he found every beverage he tried equally noxious. Finally, he settled on one that tasted like grapefruit juice and lighter fluid. Ooh, gin and tonic, that's my favorite too, Susie squealed. But that one's mine, okay? She removed the glass from his hand and took a big gulp. I'll make you one of your own. Be right back. As she slipped away, Charlie was suddenly in front of him, proffering a shot glass. Here, Dick, chill vodka. Goes down like a dream. Cheers. Rick soon felt the first blush of intoxication and a rising glow of well-being and self-confidence. Time lost all meaning as he floated about the room like a piece of driftwood bobbing on the surf. With inhibitions down, the real Rick came to fore, and as we have already noted, he was an affable, warm-hearted fellow. He stumbled from person to person, offering the most heartfelt compliments that came to his mind. He sat down on the couch beside Daisy, who was making out with Gordon. He was oblivious to the fact that he had interrupted a passionate moment and didn't register the annoyance on their faces. You know, Daisy, you are the best receptionist. You make everyone in the office feel so welcome. Gordon and Daisy both smiled, their initial irritation turning into amusement. Oh my God, he's so drunk, Daisy said, and they both laughed. Rick, grinning stupidly, chuckled along with him, not realizing he was the butt of the joke. After their laughter subsided, Gordon and Daisy looked at each other, shook their heads and smiled. Then, meeting eyes, they put their lips together in a long, passionate kiss. Rick looked on for a moment. Then he looked around the room. Like Gordon and Daisy, the other couples in the room were happily occupied. Charlie sat on an overstuffed chair with Ellie on his lap, stroking his hair and peppering with kisses. Susie and Bill were stretched out on the carpet, unabashedly entwined, with Bill's hand creeping up under Susie's shirt. Rick began to feel uncomfortable as he surveyed the scene. Then he wondered aloud, I wonder where Leanne is. He rose from the couch and began to search. Leanne was not to be found in the living room, nor in the kitchen. Feeling his way down the dark hallway, he stumbled into the bathroom. Leanne was not there either. Leanne, he said softly. Leanne? Emerging from the bathroom, he went further down the hall to the bedroom. Normally, he wouldn't think of entering someone else's bedroom, certainly without knocking anyway. But in his impaired state, all he could think of was, Leanne? He barged through the door and groped for the light switch. There was a shriek and a groan and the sound of bed springs creaking as Leanne and Mark struggled to cover themselves with a bedsheet. Clearly, they had made more progress than the other couples in the living room. God damn, Mark shouted. What the hell are you doing, Rick? Leanne sat silent, wide-eyed and slack-jawed, pulling the sheet up as high as she could to cover her breasts. Oh, God, Leanne, Rick said. Leanne, oh, God. What happened then, or how he got home? The details weren't clear in Rick's memory. Vaguely, he could remember stumbling out of her apartment, down the hallway, and out of the building. Once outside, he stood beneath the balcony and shouted, Leanne, I love you! I love you! I love you! As he sank to his knees and pounded the ground with his fists. Then, crying, he shouted it yet once again. Leanne, I love you!